Hello everyone and welcome back. It's Thursday, and so normally that would mean I would launch into some sort of new crazy project, but this week's going to be a little bit different. So because I have a pretty giant, pretty ridiculous project in the works for next week or possibly the week after, depending on how big it gets, we're going to be doing something a little bit different this week, where instead of an overall project, what I'm going to look at instead is different ways that you can, or different techniques you can use. Okay, no, I'm going to stop myself right there. What I'm trying to communicate is that I'm going to show you 3 different methods you can use to make your crochet fluffy, and we're going to go through some pros and cons. See how easy that was? Yeah, I don't know why she couldn't just tell you that. So what we will be doing is comparing specialty wool or faux fur wire brush method, as well as chain loops. So I've used all 3 of these methods in previous projects. Most notably, you would have seen me use the chain loops and the wire brush method on the moth, and the chain loops on the bumblebee. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, method 1. So method 1 isn't really a method, but it's certainly an option when you want to make something fluffy. It's specialty yarn. So I have worked with this stuff before, but in order to give it a fair go in today's video, I decided to work up with a very small ball, just add a single crochet. Right, so the pros are that this is lovely and soft, it's consistent, and you get a really predictable result. You know exactly how it's going to turn out because it's already fluffy, and it works up really fast. Now, when you look at the cons, you are working nearly completely blind with this. It's really difficult to count your stitches, and I found that I have to work completely by feel. There are restricted color options. You can only sort of find what you can find, what's available in your area, and a lot of the brands only put out certain colors. This particular one, I had the choice of this pale blue or like a pale brown, and that was pretty much it. So it does restrict what you can and can't do. It restricts your creativity. And specialty yarn comes at specialty prices. It can be quite expensive. This specialty yarn, I believe I got it for $7 or $8, and it was potentially even on sale at that price. So specialty yarn does come with a specialty price tag. So method 2, for method 2 you use a wire brush, and basically you brush your crochet and it basically breaks the fibers and it causes it to become fluffy. I've only ever really tried this with acrylic, but essentially it can be done with most basic yarns, meaning you're not limited at all on your color choices. So yeah, I've prepped this little ball ahead of time. It's just a single crochet ball. Worked up really quickly, and what you do is you take your wire brush. Now the wire brush I like to use is just a pet grooming brush. I got it for $6 or $7 from my local supermarket, the pet care aisle, and it works great. But basically the thing that you're looking for is these very thin wire bristles, and because that's what's going to catch and make it fluffy. And then what you do is you grab the piece of crochet that you want to be fluffy, and you grab your wire brush, and basically what you do is you very aggressively, I have to add, to slowly destroy the piece you're working on. So I think you get a little bit of the idea there. So you can see it's actually pulling some of the stuffing out as well as I go. So not ideal. And what it does is how it works is it breaks some of the fibers in the stitching, and that's what creates sort of the fluff on it. So you can get quite a fluffy effect on it. I will just go around and finish this one off camera now. Okay, and about 15 minutes later, we have this fluffy little thing. So you can see that even through the fluff, you can still see the base stitching. So the pros for this method are that it works with any color and it works with cheap yarn. So there is no sort of cost barrier to entry, and you can use whatever yarn you happen to have in your stash. So a few cons, it does need a specialty tool, but the tool is easy to find. You do need to be very aggressive, and it feels like you're damaging your work, or like, honestly, if it already has a face, it feels like you're breaking the trust. In terms of speed, it does take 10 to 15 minutes to do one small piece, so it is a bit of a time commitment if you're working on a bigger project, and the results can be inconsistent. It's a little bit patchy. You can still see the original stitching through. Okay, so I'm just going to interrupt myself there, just because for another project I was using this method with a different yarn, and it came up so much nicer. It was also just a cheap brown yarn. I was using it for a hedgehog project I was working on, and it came up so beautifully. So I do want to just cross this particular con out. And finally, you're never going to get super long fluffs. You're going to be restricted to sort of the lengths of the fiber that the yarn that you managed to snap out from the yarn. This is a very violent method, okay? But it does produce fluffy results. Okay, so the third method is using chain loops. Right, so I've prepped this little ball. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but basically I worked in the back loops only and left the front loops free. Basically the principle of this one is you just create small chains and then loop them through the front loops we left free in the base piece. Now I like this method because you can be quite specific in how the fluffy bits look. I mean, it is quite a specific knobbly little dreadlock type thing, not a traditional fluff, but you can control the length and spacing of each one, meaning you have control over like the final look. For the other two methods, you are kind of at the whim of the yarn you have chosen. So basically, thinner yarn won't fluff up as much even if you wire brush it for hours, and specialty yarn is what it is. Using the magic of editing, I am going to save us some time here, and there we have it. So pros, once again, for this method is you can do it with any color and any yarn. It does use quite a bit of yarn in comparison with the other two methods. With the other two methods, you make your base piece and then that piece becomes fluffy or is fluffy. In this, you make the base piece and then you have to attach a lot of it, more yarn to it to make it fluffy. So you should keep that in mind. It can affect your costs. It is really easy. It's just chains and slip stitches, and I think they're one of the first things you learn when it comes to crochet. So this is a really accessible method to make something fluffy, and you do have a lot of control over the outcome because you can control the length and spacing of every single loop. You have absolute control over what the final product ends up looking like. So you see that I've had control over how this has ended up. So I used shorter loops and spaced them further out for a ruffled, almost feathery look, and then transitioned to longer chains that I put in every stitch for the bottom half for like a denser fluff. So the cons for this method is that it is the slowest of the three methods. So where the wire brush took 10 to 15 minutes to get even that result for it, this took more like 20 plus. It is a long, slow method and it does get quite tedious. You also have to plan ahead in your construction. You have to make your base piece smaller than you want the final product to be, and you do have to plan ahead in terms of using the back loops only when you're constructing it, so you have those front loops free to make your loops. And sort of the final con isn't really a con, but basically the result might not be fluffy enough for your taste. It is a very sort of specific, almost like a curl or a bobble, or I refer to them as chain loops, but they almost have a dreadlock look. So it isn't necessarily what you think of when you think fluffy. So yeah, the results might not be fluffy enough for your taste. So those are the three fluffy techniques that I use most often in my designs. You can see that they all three have very distinct looks to them. So in fact, I often use more than one of them at a time. Do you have a favorite technique to use that I've missed here? Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know if you like this kind of technique toolbox type of video by hitting the like button, and of course hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my videos. I do upload every Thursday, though I do normally focus on bigger projects. So that's it for today. I'll see you next week. Bye. That's where I need to direct my vision. I need to learn to look into the camera. I have to learn to look in the camera. I need to stick an eyeball up there or something. Oh, okay, we got some blue tack. This is going to be great. Okay, alrighty. I'm going to stick a little eyeball up there. How's that? Okay, right, I think that's going to work. Okay.